to Mao. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk-a-walk. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew, and joining me tonight are Blake and Sebastian. It was a crazy day of baseball, and it ended with the Padres taking out the Braves, hanging on, I will say, to sweep them. Sorry, 1 second. I don't know if you're hearing some buzzing, we'll work to fix that in a second here, but as I was saying, the Padres hung on to defeat the Braves, sweeping them in the wild card series. That's setting up a stage for an NLDS rematch, if you will, or third time for the Dodgers and Padres. And I think the buzzing, my apologies, may have been Blake, so we're going to let him sort of check out really quick, and then he'll join us in a minute. Sebastian, while we wait for Blake, what initial thoughts? Kind of, we'll get into a lot of the NLDS stuff in a minute here, but just, kind of a fun day of baseball with the crazy games going on. Was there anything in particular that you were locked into?
Yeah, the Braves made it a little bit interesting at the end there. Other than that, surprised to see the Orioles. I know they're in a weird spot where they're talented enough to make some noise in the playoffs, but they're also not quite there yet. They're so young. They have a bright future. Obviously this sucks for them, but they got plenty of other chances. But yeah, that was kind of a good for the Royals too. The Royals and the Tigers. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot the Tigers. Jeez Louise, that was crazy.
Yeah, we'll get into that stuff. Blake, you need to explain your hat a little bit to people who are joining us live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. First of all, thank you. Secondly, Blake, go ahead and explain what's with the hat.
Yeah, it's from the Soul series. For all of you who've been here for a while, I went out there and had to get the hat. It's got the logo on the side there. So I figured I'd never wear this at any opportunity than a show like this to kind of preview the upcoming series. So, it was just sitting there. So I had to make use of it.
Yeah, there we go. We have our first super chat of the night. It's from Laura, and she's saying, happy birthday to Pinsanity. I missed that if there were comments earlier about it. So happy birthday, Pinsanity. Laura, thank you for the super chat. I know you're in here with us all the time. Pinsanity, I know you're with us pretty much every show as well. I'm seeing a lot of other regulars, BC, Iris, Kenny, Nomo, FOMO. Thank you, everybody. And if you are new to the channel, please, and you are on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, hit the like button on this video, ring the notification bell. And if you've been with us for a long time, you know that I'm going to also ask you to do all of those same things, especially hitting the like video on this button specifically. If you're listening on podcasts, we appreciate if you would subscribe, rate, and review us there as well. You can find us on Google, Apple, Spotify. All right, we have a great show for everybody planned tonight, but we are getting some super chats, so we're going to stick with those first. Christopher says, more stress-free with Astros eliminated. Sebastian, you mentioned it. The Tigers, pulled off the sweep of the Astros in Houston, which is all the more impressive. Stress-free, though, Blake, are you? Is this something that you think Dodger fans are going to say, now October is completely stress-free, or is the stress and anxiety just beginning?
I don't think it changes a whole lot. If the Astros lost and then the Dodgers lose, no one would care what the Astros did. It's nice to celebrate right now. I would say it's a little bittersweet with AJ Hinch being the manager of the Tigers because he was the Astros manager during that whole scandal. So guess we got to root against the Tigers now, even though they're a fun story. But if we want to keep it consistent with Astros hating, yeah, Tigers have to go down too now.
Yeah, not just that, but on the Tigers roster, obviously, is former Dodgers prospect legend Trey Sweeney, who's now starting for Detroit and making an impact there. Tommy Alvarado says, bro, seriously, take that hat off. Yeah, we're still getting more people are joining in asking about the hat again. If you missed it a minute ago, Blake purchased that hat while he was out covering the Seoul series for us in South Korea, and obviously that was the Dodgers and Padres playing each other. It looks like maybe is bowling going to work? Blake, are you changing?
I don't. If they're paying for a super chat, I guess I have to.
There we go. That's a good call.
I figured it would be fun to wear it and kind of we got the NLDS coming up, but we'll go with something else here.
All right, there we go. The support, the super chats are getting Blake to change his hat, so we'll give him a second to do that. let's get into. There's going to be plenty to discuss about the NLDS, and we're going to get there. Let's start with the American League side, and as we mentioned, the Royals, the Tigers have advanced. AL Central is sort of dominating the ALDS matchups now. Like it's them, it's the AL Central and the Yankees. Blake, I know filled out some a postseason bracket, and your who'd you end up going? Your Royals are still in it. Is that who your pick was?
I did have Dodgers Royals in the World Series, so feeling pretty confident right now. I had the Astros winning, so they kind of messed me up there. And I have the Mets winning and the Padres winning, so Mets need to come through tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. Sebastian, looking at what's left on the American side of the postseason bracket, on one hand, it's sort of shaping up for, hey, the Yankees appear to have kind of an easy path, if you will, to the World Series. On the other hand, could that come with some added pressure for them of like now they're really expected to be there?
It's hard to say, they've had trouble getting, past the Astros at like in years past. Now they're gone. So maybe that's like a little bit of monkey off their back. I like either the Tigers or the Royals, against them. The Tigers, I think they kind of thrived in kind of this situation because they have Screwball. So that's kind of already like in your mind, you're kind of already chalking that up as a dub. Once it gets to a longer series, maybe they'll have more trouble. But yeah.
All right, we have a couple more super chats, so let's pause the American League discussion. Blake, Tommy is saying thank you. He appreciates the change. Tommy, we appreciate you being in here with us. We appreciate your first super chat, getting Blake to change his hat, and we certainly appreciate the second one from you. Rogelio Rosales says, young Blake, the drip god, are you nervous for the series? Blake, I'll explain to you what a drip god is after the show. There's not enough time for me to go over that live right now.
I appreciate that. Nervous for the series. I think there's a level of nerves for every series, regardless of who they're playing. I can't ever say I felt confident going into a playoff series before because we've seen so much of what happens in the past. Like, you can have everything going right for you heading into the series and then end up losing. I keep mentioning 2021. It was Padres-Dodgers, and the Dodgers beat the Padres 14 of 19 times in the regular season that year, and then they lost in 4 games in the NLDS. Last year, we all wanted the Diamondbacks to be their opponent. They got swept in a historic fashion. So, I never feel totally confident. I'm confident in the sense I believe in the Dodgers roster and their ability to win. I'm just not confident in the aspect of the playoffs and how anything can go wrong and anything can change at any point.
Yeah, that's fair. And we're going to get into some NLDS stuff. We'll kind of brush up against it right now. As I mentioned, the Mets were looking like they were on their way to sweeping the Brewers as well. And we were not going to have any baseball on Thursday afternoon. Milwaukee ended up coming back to stave off elimination, forced now winner take all game 3. Milwaukee, of course, is hosting that again, still at American Family Field. Blake, what are your thoughts kind of on the Mets? They sort of, kind of got hot a little bit. And then I would argue, if you missed it, I was on with Jeff earlier this week, and I said it's the Braves. The Mets. I was upset with the Mets for winning the first game of the doubleheader against the Braves, and I felt they basically mailed it in the second one because they had nothing to play for at that point. I would even argue that they purposely were a little bit more lax about things because they were trying to get a matchup with the Brewers. They were about to sweep them, and now they're facing a game 3 where they could be eliminated all of a sudden.
I don't think they tanked or anything that series. Maybe they took their foot off of the gas, but I think they're still trying to win. Like a lot of people know, my dad is a Met fan, and he was terrified of the Brewers. He rather would have faced the Padres. So, from a Mets perspective, they struggled with the Brewers a lot this year, I guess. So I thought that was kind of interesting to me because I definitely would have rather played the Brewers. And I told him, you can beat the Brewers. It doesn't really matter. It's the playoffs. Anyone can win. So I still think they come through tomorrow and end up winning. I think the Mets are a pretty talented team, especially with their lineup. The Brewers, I feel like they had to take advantage of their first 2 games with their top pitchers going to end up winning. But we'll see. I mean, it's the playoffs. Like I said, it's all random, and who knows.
So the other side of it, Sebastian, which majority of people here care about, obviously the Padres closing out the Braves. Took an early lead. They knocked Max Fried out of the game. I think Snicker said during his interview, I forgot who's the reporter in San Diego for ESPN, but something effective. Fried was feeling the kind of some residual maybe soreness or discomfort after being hit. The Padres also did get to him early. They scored with 2 outs in the second inning, kind of took a lead. And then their big bullpen that we keep hearing about, got a little shaky there before hanging on.
Yeah, they scored the 5 spot, and they kind of coasted on that the rest of the way. Like you said, the bullpen kind of gave up some runs there at the end. The Braves, I was kind of worried because they're kind of in a similar situation when they won the World Series. They lose Ronald Acuna, kind of trade for those cast-off outfielders that kind of make some noise, but wasn't enough this year.
Yeah, and they got it close. I mean, look, you get it to a 1-run game, all of a sudden a home run changes it. If there's a walk and then a home run, suddenly you have a lead in the 9th inning. So I was watching, not only obviously because of implications with the Dodgers, but just out of curiosity of, was Atlanta going to kind of steal a game, if you will, and force a game 3, which at that point, it's a winner take all, anything can happen. All right, before we get into some super chats, before we get into a little bit more with the NLDS, we have more super chats. Ricky is saying that's much better, Blake. So again, your new hat is drawing much better reviews than the one you started the show with. I agree with you. I didn't think there would be as much, hate, if you will, for it, some disdain, but maybe it's a sign of how fans are feeling heading into this matchup.
I mean, I think a lot of Dodger fans don't want to say it's a rivalry because the Dodgers are rivals with the Giants, and that's always going to be the top one. But Padres-Dodgers has really grown into a rivalry over the past few years, so I get it. Like, I personally don't really hate the Padres. I don't know. I dislike the Giants and the Astros, and that's about it for me. So I can tolerate the hat just for the fun of the NLDS matchup in the show, but it's not something I'd ever wear out or anything like that.
Yeah, and we don't need to get into your entire hat collection right now. I'm not going to do that to you, but knowing some of the hats you have, that one I can understand more so from you went out to South Korea. It was a unique series, a unique experience. So I can understand you having it on. And like you said, for the purpose of the show, I thought it was pretty fitting, but the chat did not agree with you or myself. Ozzy Picasso says, we should beat them easily. I think referencing the Dodgers defeating the Padres. And if we lose, Roberts should be fired. Sebastian, Dodgers have not even played one playoff game yet this year, and there's already calls for Dave Roberts being fired. Do you see any scenario where maybe the Dodgers make a decision like that?
I mean, you'd have to think it had to be at least as bad as last year, right? Where they just don't show up entirely. It has to be like really bad. Like, given the context, they have two proven starting pitchers, and that's kind of all you got. You have Walker, who's shown his signs of improvement, but you still really don't like that. Like I said, that's all about context. If they lose, I'm not saying I hope they won't. Knock on wood right there. It just would depend on how that goes down, how they look, how the series goes down, and if that's the case.
Yeah, I agree. Our next super chat from Tabari says, I'm not so moved by the Padres' crippled pitching staff and all. I would say this is probably in the minority opinion, especially seeing some of the comments so far with everybody. We haven't even asked for predictions yet, but I have seen a lot of, Padres are tough. Padres are the better team, things of that nature. Blake, I know you typically fall on, and you've shared this with everybody of, every team is a good team in the playoffs at this point, and really not going to necessarily be too surprised. I imagine that's sort of how you're chalking up this series.
Yes, I think I'm still leading Dodgers for the series. They get the chance to set up their pitching staff better. They have Shohei Ohtani. I think he's the biggest difference maker. Like, obviously they didn't have him last year or any of the years before. So I think he's going to be locked in, keep up his good hitting. He's excited to play in the playoffs. Teoscar Hernandez, another guy they didn't have last year, who me and Scott have both talked about him all year as a guy who should be able to step up. He's proved it in big games before, so believe in him. Tommy Edman, someone they haven't really had with that type of contact first hitter in their lineup in previous years, so I think that'll make a difference. And as much as people want to talk about like the starting pitching not being great, I agree with that, but most teams would still love to have Jack Flaherty and Yoshinobu Yamamoto at the top of their rotation. And starting pitching, I don't think it's as important in the playoffs as a lot of people talk about it. Like, I think a lot of that comes from back when starters used to go 8 innings every single game, no matter what. There's a huge importance on starting pitching, but they've really become less important now. I think Phil Plunkett had an article saying the average innings for a starter last year was 4.2 in the playoffs. So if the Dodgers get that, they're going to be fine. They have a fantastic bullpen. They have the pitching staff they need to get outs. They just have to put it all together and play good baseball.
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of that. I think the Dodgers can survive the NLDS with, a bunch of short starts from their rotation. I think where it gets a little tricky is if you're continuing to average, 4 innings every outing as you get to the NLCS and potentially World Series. But of course, you're not going to get there without winning the NLDS first. So that's a conversation we can sort of table for another time. And hey, maybe by the time the Dodgers advance, Tony Gonsolin is ready. Maybe Clayton Kershaw's back and they're getting some length out of some guys. All right, let's get into it. NLDS, as we said, is set. Game 1 is Saturday at Dodger Stadium. Game 2 is Sunday. Padres and Dodgers this is now going to be the third time they've ever met in the postseason. Each of them have come in the NLDS. Dodgers swept the Padres in 2020 on their way to winning the World Series. Padres got some revenge in 2022. They upset the Dodgers in 4 games. And now here we are 2 years later. Padres are back in the playoffs. They missed the postseason last year. Dodgers, of course, are in the playoffs for a 12th year in a row. Sebastian, how much are you how exciting? How would you describe your feelings heading into this matchup this year?
Yeah, kind of like what Blake said earlier. I'm always, just because of stuff that's happened in the past, I always go into the postseason with specific expectations. I know it's always, that's the saying, the best team doesn't always win. And kind of this year, that's really unique where there really is no clear cut best team. It's everyone's been kind of this, everyone's had their ups and downs during the season. There's really no standout team this season. So pretty much, even though the Dodgers they have their faults, all the other teams have their faults. So I think the biggest difference maker between last year and this year, like Blake said again, is going to be they have Ohtani, and their bullpen, by statistically, last year their bullpen was technically better than this year in terms of ERA. But I think this year they're deeper and more talented because you got Kopech, you got Vesia, you got Treinen, because we didn't have Treinen last year. And then you got Phillips, who has had a rough year by his standards, but he's still, I think the past couple months, he only gave up 2 runs if you exclude an outing where you give 5 runs in 1 start. So I think the bullpen and Ohtani is it kind of puts my mind at ease a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, another thing, we're going to get into kind of some of these specifics on the Dodgers side, but what sort of jumps out, at least initially for me with this series, are the injuries. You look at the Dodgers, it's obviously been well documented who they're without: Tyler Glasnow, Gavin Stone, Brusdar Graterol, Clayton Kershaw, to a little bit lesser extent, just because how much were you necessarily really counting on him to sort of lead your rotation, but an injury nonetheless. But then in terms of guys that you are counting on that are still quote unquote available, Freddie Freeman. We'll have some quotes from Dave Roberts and Brandon Gomes kind of discussing his status and recovering from a sprained right ankle that he suffered that the night the Dodgers clinched the NL West against the Padres, of course. Miguel Rojas is playing through a torn left adductor muscle, and that's rest has kind of helped, but he's not going to be 100% healthy. And you look on the Padres, they've been, I think Ha-Seong Kim was recently, it might have been as the regular season was ending, I think he was ruled out for at least the NLDS, if not the entire playoffs. And now tonight, the Padres, Joe Musgrove started for them, and he had to leave the game because of right elbow tightness. And I know on paper, the Padres certainly have a lot of plenty of other starting pitching depth to get certainly in a shorter series, but Musgrove is a significant injury to begin with. Blake, how much do you think, not so much one specific player, but kind of just maybe the overall combination and totality, injuries will sort of be felt in this series of, the Dodgers miss Tyler Glasnow, even though, there is some confidence in Jack Flaherty starting game 1?
I think it's hard to say. I think Freddie Freeman's might be the biggest difference maker in it and what you end up dealing with. I think we're at the point where we've kind of expected that Glasnow wouldn't be available for a while now. Same with Gavin Stone. But if Freddie Freeman is fine enough to play through his injury and it doesn't really affect him, I don't think we're going to be talking about injuries as a huge difference maker in this series. Because, like, it's okay to note Glasnow's out, but then you also have to say, but they don't have Joe Musgrove and things like that. So I think the Dodgers lineup specifically is pretty healthy overall, besides for the injuries that Rojas and Freeman are going to try and play through. So I really think those are the main factors there that we're going to be focused on, because if Freddie Freeman is struggling to move around well and stuff, it's going to affect his defense. It's going to affect him base running, potentially hitting. So we just don't really know until he's on the field, and that's going to be the biggest question mark for me.
Yeah, I see. Iris is asking if Musgrove is out for the NLDS. There's been nothing yet, and I don't know if we would get anything tonight. To be quite honest, Padres probably won't necessarily reveal something like that until maybe Friday at the earliest, if not Saturday morning when they're having to set their roster, and Musgrove either is or isn't on it. If obviously, whenever you hear elbow injury for any pitcher, like, you'd be hard pressed to think. And Musgrove did deal with elbow trouble earlier this season, so if it's a repeat of that for him, it'd certainly be unfortunate. And yeah, we'll just kind of have to see if he's going to be on the roster again. Game 1 at Dodger Stadium is on Saturday. Game 2 is Sunday. Monday would be an off day. Game 3 down at Petco Park is Tuesday. If necessary, Game 4 would be Wednesday. And if it goes to a Game 5, then it would be next Friday, October 11th, back at Dodger Stadium. Let's get into kind of, the Dodgers, as the Padres were playing the Braves this week in the wild card series. The Dodgers have obviously had the first round bye for the third time in as many years since MLB went to this expanded postseason format. Blake, you and I were on the conference call today with Dave Roberts and Brandon Gomes, and I want to read, if you didn't catch our article on DodgerBlue.com, one of the things that stuck out, that Dave Roberts was asked if there was anything different that he's seen with the Dodgers during their workouts this week, and he said, quote, "I see more hunger, I see more edge. I like that. Not to say guys weren't prepared, trying, or cared, but there's a different level of intensity. That kind of sour taste that you have when you make an early exit from the postseason. Our guys are tired of it, and this is another opportunity. So yeah, I do sense that edge, which I love." End quote. Blake, I don't know about you, but a lot of that sounded pretty familiar to me. I feel like something along those lines was also said last year. But are you buying into maybe things being different with the Dodgers this time around?
I think so. I think the thing that stood out to me was he said the guys are tired of losing in the playoffs. Like, we haven't heard that as much in the past. It's been a lot of kind of just another game, it is what it is type mentality. And I know they tried to increase intensity and stuff last year, and we've talked about that a lot. We have another video on it for anyone who wants to go check it out. But we didn't feel like they did a good job of increasing intensity. This year they have the traject pitching system in their facilities now, which can simulate any pitcher throwing. So I think that should help them a lot. And I think there is more of a focus around it. Roberts did follow up by saying, like, the players are sacrificing more time with their family and trying to keep a tight clubhouse while they're off instead of going off and doing their own thing and then coming back. I do think that is going to be a little more important. Helps keep you in baseball focused instead of completely shutting it down and then trying to come back. So we have to see it. We have to see when they're on the field and what they end up doing. But I think I'm a little more confident this year that after 2 failed attempts at having the bye and not playing the wild card round, that maybe they're making some progress now to figure out what they need to do correctly.
Sebastian, a lot has been made about having the first round bye in the playoffs and the challenges it creates, because you're basically, you have 5 days off until you're playing baseball again from the end of the regular season to the start of the division series. Is it an excuse? Is it valid in your opinion? Where do you fall with kind of that big, discussion?
Yeah, I was on a much smaller scale, just high school, but my high school coach Sean Gilbert used to always tell us he knew one guy in his whole major league career that he's called it like he could just flip a switch. Like, he could just be nothing, just sitting on the couch all day for like a week or whatever, could just flip a switch and go back in the batting cage or take live BP and just like nothing happened. And he said that was Barry Bonds. So like, that was like a big point of emphasis for us. Like, in high school, you have winter break, you have like 2 weeks off, and he would always kind of drill us like, don't get complacent. And it is true, like, my freshman year, I think I didn't have like access to like facilities or whatever over the break, and like I went back in the cage coming back from winter break and swinging the bat just on a tee. If I just felt off, so you need like that, and I can't even imagine facing major league pitching. Um, that's not really an excuse. I'm personally not a fan of this new format at all. I think like it's not an excuse, the extra days, but it is a little bit of a hindrance. I think they had it perfectly. I know they're probably not going to change it, but kind of the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Like I think 5 out of the last like 1 and 2 seeds since this new system have like lost in the DS. So and that's really a small sample size, but you know it's at least a factor, and yeah, they just gotta. Hopefully, these new changes that they make kind of have a good impact, and keep them fresh and ready.
Yeah, and you mentioned the expanded playoff format and how teams, the top 2 division winners in each league that were getting the buys, have not had success. Blake and I, we did a video. Was it earlier this week, Blake, or late last week? I've lost track of the days.
Same one about the intensity I was talking about too.
Yeah,
So.
I've lost track of the days, but it is up. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see kind of our discussion about the Dodgers making changes for their workouts throughout this week. It was the Astros. So the Astros are the only team that have had a first round bye and won the World Series. The Astros and Yankees are the only teams that have advanced out of the division series after having a bye. That's all heading into this year. We'll obviously have to see now how the Phillies, Dodgers, Yankees, and Guardians do with that quote unquote advantage, if you will. I do think, as much as it does create some of the challenges that Sebastian, you alluded to, of your timing just being off after having a break. Like, I get all that. I think it still is beneficial to not have to play extra games where, we're seeing like the Astros are getting upset by the Tigers, the Padres, beating the Braves. I think we all would have predicted that. I wasn't sure about Mets Brewers. That was maybe a little bit of a toss up, if you will. Royals, like I would have given the Orioles maybe a little bit of an advantage. That I didn't follow either one of those teams too closely down the stretch, so it could be, it's just kind of basing it off of the higher seed being at home. But things happen. And especially this season, out of all years, the Dodgers with their injuries that we kind of touched on, we're going to continue to get into. If they needed to win a best of 3 series before then heading into division, the NLDS, like that's a uphill battle that I don't think is worth them climbing. And so, yeah, you try to figure out how you can adjust things. In our video that Blake alluded to, that we recapped and kind of explained everything, the Dodgers maybe their biggest change was making, instead of starting with a scrimmage on Tuesday, they made that a voluntary workout day for players. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they've had today, Wednesday, they had a workout. They're having another one Thursday along with a scrimmage game. And that'll be the plan on Friday as well. And then we're at the NLDS for game 1. And then at that point, it's just a matter of playing baseball. All right, let's get into some of the roster decisions that are going to have to be coming. Dave Roberts, the starting rotation had already been set. Jack Flaherty, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Walker Buehler, Landon Knack. It was in no necessarily specific order. Brandon Gomes today, while he was speaking with media, confirmed that Jack Flaherty would be the game 1 starter and Yoshinobu Yamamoto is game 2. Gomes said the Dodgers haven't really looked past game 2 at this point, but obviously Buehler and Knack are the options sort of there, and maybe even an opener in front of Knack. Sebastian, any surprise, any strong feelings on the Dodgers deciding to go with Flaherty instead of Yamamoto in game 1?
Not really surprised. Don't really have a problem with it. This could be like totally wrong, but Yamamoto's faced, I think, the Padres a couple times, right, this season?
Definitely. His debut was obviously against them, and that was a disaster. I thought he faced them another time. Let me see. Let me pull it up really quick.
The only reason I say this is Flaherty has had 1 start against them this season. That was this past series. So maybe that factored in, but either way, don't really have a problem with it. If they're going to keep Yamamoto on his extra rest, it does cause potentially some problems, but you can't really go wrong 1 or 2 either way. That offense kind of show up and bullpen's going to do his thing.
Yeah, so I did double check it. Yamamoto faced the Padres in his debut, as I mentioned, in South Korea, which was a disaster of an outing. And then April 12th, back at Dodger Stadium, he went 5 innings, allowed 3 runs, 4 hits, 2 home runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. So not great, but not terrible. I think that's probably honestly around what maybe the Dodgers should be sort of hoping for or expecting, kind of given what ended up happening with Yamamoto's season with the rotator cuff injury and coming back up. And he's only pitched 5 innings once since returning. I did look at the schedule, and you mentioned it. They are keeping Yamamoto on extra rest, and so Flaherty, by starting Game 1, he would be available theoretically for Game 4 on short rest. If not, if it goes to a Game 5 and it's Flaherty, he would start on 1-day rest. Coincidentally, Yamamoto's start in the NLDS is coming Sunday, October 6th, and if the Dodgers advance to the NLCS, Game 1 of that is October 13th, so a full week. So basically the once a week kind of schedule that they want to keep him on. Blake, do you think that their decision between the 2 right-handers basically just boiled down to something like that?
I think so, because it allows you to go back to Flaherty in Game 5, and I don't think they'd push Yamamoto to that point if they needed him there. Then it sets them up for Game 1 of the NLCS for Yamamoto, and then I believe that would also set him up for a Game 6 or Game 7, staying on that same schedule there. So makes sense. I think that's what it was all about. If you're going by the most talented pitcher, I think Yamamoto is your clear Game 1 starter, but they have to keep him on that schedule that they want of basically once a week or every 6th day or whatever, 7th day. So.
Yeah, it'll in terms. So the first 2 guys are set. Obviously, no matter what happens, there's going to be a Game 3. Sebastian, do you have a preference between Buehler or Landon Knack / opener type thing for who should get the ball in Game 3? And that again would be on the road in San Diego.
Yeah, maybe I think Knack has kind of shown more in spurts this year, but I think you got to go with the veteran and Buehler. He's thrived in these spots in the past. This year hasn't gone all that well for him, but he's had his moments sometimes. And yeah, I just gotta think you gotta ride the veteran here.
Like, where would
but I
you
wouldn't
fall?
be mad with either way.
Where would you fall? And does your answer change based on how the first 2 games go?
I think it depends on the first 2 games. If they're up in the series, you probably just go Buehler Game 3. If they're playing for their life or it's a 1-1 series, I would personally go bullpen game, just complete bullpen game. Wow. I think that would be their best chance of winning, and then go from there, try and figure it out for Game 4 with probably Buehler there. Hopefully you take that second or the third game there, so you're up 2-1 with Buehler on the mound there, and then worst case scenario, you're back at home. But I have a lot of confidence in their bullpen, and I think we saw today the Tigers were really successful using bullpen games. The Dodgers have had good bullpen games in the past. So I believe in that group more than I believe in their 3rd and 4th starter. So if the season was on the line or a pivotal matchup there, that's what I would go with.
It's interesting. I see the reasoning. I think it's an interesting standpoint. And like you outlined it, explained it very well. I could see where that line of thinking would certainly be beneficial for the Dodgers, sort of related to that in terms of, bullpen game and relying on a bunch of pitchers. Brandon Combs was asked about the Dodgers postseason roster and if, decisions had kind of been set yet. He said, not really. And he left the door open at the Dodgers, not necessarily going with 13 pitchers and 13 position players. As a reminder, roster rules only allow you to carry a maximum of 13 pitchers. You could go 12 if you want. You could go 11 if you want. Obviously, it's a shorter series. Blake, considering the state of the Dodgers' kind of overall pitching staff, and as you mentioned, the likelihood or probability that they're going to have to rely on their bullpen pretty heavily, are you surprised that Gomes said what he did? Do you see any scenario where the Dodgers take 12 pitchers instead of 13?
I think there is a scenario if they view Knack as a bullpen piece more than a starter and plan on going a bullpen game. And it's probably going to depend on the health of Rojas and Freeman, how confident they are with them. If they're still somewhat concerned about either of them, they might keep Kiermaier around just to give defensive substitutions late in the game and stuff like that. If they're pretty confident in the health, I think it's going to be definitely a 13-man bullpen because you don't expect anyone else to really come off the field at any point. Your pinch hitters are essentially going to be Kike and Pajes to begin with, so you're not going to want to pinch hit with Kiermaier or something like that. So I think it's really depending on the health of Freeman and Rojas and how comfortable they are with those guys. But I think in an ideal world, they'd want 13 pitchers pretty easily choice there.
Sebastian, in terms of the bullpen, Daniel Hudson is a name that's been a little bit of a lightning rod. Joe Kelly is another. Do you see both of them making the postseason roster, or do you think one or both might be at risk of being left off?
If I had to choose between one of them, I'd definitely go Daniel, because you never know what you're gonna get with Joe. Like, especially like in the regular season, Joe's fine. Joe's money. Like, every game's not do or die. In the postseason, you don't want to take that risk of you don't know what kind of outing you're getting from your reliever. I'd have to think of like the other who would replace both of them, but I think I'd want Daniel had a really strong start to the year, kind of the middle of the year, so I'd probably go Daniel.
So you would, just to be clear, you would, if you had to choose between Hudson and Kelly on the roster, you would prefer Hudson.
Keep Hudson, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned some of the other options. I think Ben Casparius is a name who maybe could enter the conversation. Edgardo Enriquez, obviously, he came up late in the year for his MLB debut. Dave Roberts kind of alluded to him as possibly being a, quote, secret weapon for the Dodgers. Maybe even Michael Grove. I think I can see the reasoning, but behind maybe Hudson over Kelly. What I wonder, though, and I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot completely, but I will like a little bit, is if I've looked at Joe Kelly as possibly also being kind of the multi-inning relief pitcher if they need somebody to get some extra outs. Blake loves that idea.
Was it 2019 they tried to do that and cost them?
Was it 2019 or 2021? I
think it was versus the Nationals in 2019.
Okay, yeah. Then, Kelly wasn't on the team at that point, though, was he?
Or maybe it was 2020. I don't know. They all kind of blend in at this point, but I'm sure people know what I'm talking about when Dave tried to push him an extra inning.
Yeah, I mean, I get the concern. I know how it sounds, but unless, like, if Kelly's not on the roster and Ben Casparius is not on the roster, like, you need somebody who can do that, right? Like, and it's, I'm not saying go out there and get 3 outs, but you don't know what you're going to get from your guys, and so don't you need some sort of coverage?
For me, I think Knack is kind of in that spot for the meantime. And if they end up using him, then it's bullpen game 4. And if they don't end up using him, then it's Knack game 4. I think they're going to, a lot of it's just going to be putting together the pieces each game and trying to figure out what works best and not necessarily setting things up specifically. I do think Hudson and Kelly are both going to be on the roster unless they do want to carry Kiermaier for injury reasons. But yeah, I think they're going to do a lot of mixing and matching in the playoffs this year.
Like, it sounds like you went to the Dodgers front office school of optionality with the roster and just wanting to have, this whole laundry list of what buttons you could push.
I mean, that's kind of how they've always kept their options open like that. So just trying to learn and see what they've done in the past and predict what they will do. I know I have my list of relievers here that I basically have the whole roster figured out, in my opinion, unless they end up going 14-12. So I've just been playing around with the ideas a lot.
All right. Well, hey, everybody who's with us live right now, you just heard it. Blake he's going to take care of the Dodgers roster, NLDS roster article for us because he's got it all figured out. He's been keeping a close eye on the front office. Related to all of this, of course, as we mentioned, are kind of the injuries that the Dodgers are dealing with. And I think the biggest one in terms of players who are presumably going to be available is Freddie Freeman. Brandon Gomes said Freeman is continuing to receive treatment this week. The plan is for him to face live pitching at some point during their workouts. Dave Roberts conceded that Freeman is not going to be moving as he would normally would because of the sprained ankle, even if he is getting better. Sebastian, how much of a concern is this injury for you? And keep in mind, Freeman is also playing with the hairline fracture in the finger. Was it his middle finger, I think, or his ring finger? I think middle finger on his right hand.
Yeah, the good thing is, the ankle doesn't really concern me as much as the finger, just because, the ankle for planting and that, I think that has the least effect on what he could do. Yeah, maybe he'll be hindered running a little bit, maybe fielding, but he's going to be in there for his bat. But yeah, I'm not too concerned. This year the bye definitely helps, gives him that more rest. But yeah, I'm sure he'll be able to pull through.
Blake, you were on the calls with me this afternoon, kind of hearing what Brandon Gomes, Dave Roberts had to say, sort of reading their body language, maybe reading between the lines a little bit. Part of me, and I'll let you answer this. Sorry, I was queuing you up for a question, and then I'm going to give you my answer. Part of me feels like there's a slight chance that maybe Freeman is only available off the bench for game one. Are you in that same camp, or are you buying the no, we don't see a world where he's not starting?
I think just Freddie being who he is, he's going to push to
That's
be
fair.
in there regardless. Like, even if he's not 100%, if he's playing at 75% or something, I think he's still going to tell Dave, like, I'm being in that lineup, you're not taking me out. So I do tend to believe that he'll be in there, and they keep saying he's getting better. I think they said he was hitting yesterday, and then he's supposed to hit again tomorrow. So that's a good sign there. I think it was Dave, it might have been Gomes, who said he's still somewhat limited, like on the bases and his defense, but you can kind of deal with that at first base more than other positions. And I know Freddie's a good base runner, but he's not exactly like the burner that you need his speed out there to be effective. So I think he can manage it. That's my hope. I think that's their hope, and I'm sure Freddie's doing everything he can to be in there. So I'm pretty confident he'll be starting. Maybe he takes the game 2 off or something, or they manage it, or just take him out in the 7th inning or something if they have a lead, kind of manage him like that. But I think he'll push to be in there regardless.
Are you more concerned about the ankle than the finger?
A little. I think his stats since he broke or had the fracture in his finger have definitely significantly decreased. I think some of that was also the timing with his son, so I'm not sure like how much overlap of what's affecting him there. They're both concerning. I mean, holding the bat and all that is definitely a big part of swinging. So if your finger is not feeling right, that can definitely play a role. For me, I think it's still the ankle is the bigger issue, because we're kind of having these conversations about, is he going to start? Is he going to be out? Is he going to be a bench player? So until those are really answered and we see him in the lineup, I think that's the bigger concern for me.
That's fair. I'm going to go. I think you bring up a good point that, the stuff with his son, who fortunately has continued to get better over recent weeks, is there was probably some, overlap privately that we didn't necessarily know about at the time. I'm going to go finger, though. I think it's like holding the bat has been a little bit problematic. And not that Freddie has used that as an excuse by any means, but just sort of thinking it through. Obviously, you have a hairline fracture in your finger, and trying to like bend it around a bat doesn't seem like it's very fun. The ankle, I think you can get some of the swelling out of it. You can wear a brace, you can wrap it, you can do tape it, all that stuff, and kind of play even if you are a little bit limited. But I'll go finger. But hey, I'm sure I know the odds are that he'll probably be in the lineup. I'm still, despite what the Dodgers are saying, part of me just felt like today when we were hearing some of the stuff from Gomes and Roberts was, maybe are they not bluffing, but are they expecting? Are they a little bit too hopeful, maybe, as Dave Roberts has shared in the past? All right, let's answer some questions now for the next 10 or 15 minutes. As a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, it helps us kind of spot it out as we're scrolling through the comments. And if you want to make sure that we answer something specific, super chats are the way to go. And I do see that we have one. Felipe, I apologize for not getting this sooner.
Oh, I just bookmarked that one because I thought it was interesting.
Oops, I thought it was a super chat. Never mind, but we can answer it. This is a good question. He wants to know, who's the left-handed bat coming off the bench? If you ask me, they won't have one, because I think they're going 13 pitchers and 13 position players, and that means Kiermaier is not included in my group. Sebastian, do you see the Dodgers having a left-handed bat coming off their bench?
Yeah, no, I think they need as many arms in the bullpen as they can get, because that's really going to be their strength. So I like your answer.
Blake, I saw you. I think you might have a different answer.
I do have the very Dodger answer here. They're viewing Gavin Lux as their lefty off the bench because he won't be starting against a lefty. So when you need to go to a lefty hitter late in the game when the righty relievers come in, then you have Lux there. I think Lux has struggled a lot hitting as a pinch hitter. I think he's like 1 for 20 something in his career, but I think that's how they're viewing it because he's not starting versus lefties. So they're just kind of viewing him in that role and, their versatility stuff that they love to do and mixing and matching.
There we go. Yeah, Blake, again, like I said, Blake came straight from the Dodgers front office class this afternoon, right to this channel with everybody. That is a good point. And I'm poking fun at you, but yes, I could certainly see that being the case. All right. Well, as we wait, remember, if you could put it in question in all caps, it makes it easier for us to find. Real quick, while we wait for these to come in, real quick, you guys, predictions on the Mets and Brewers playing Game 3 tomorrow. Who's your winner, Sebastian?
Who the Mets got going tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't. Is it
I'm not sure.
Severino going for them? Did he pitch yet?
He was pitching, I think, in the doubleheader, right? So I'm not sure.
I think. Oh, it's Jose Quintana versus Tobias Myers. I've never heard of him, gonna be honest.
I think I don't know. The Mets are kind of like the hotter team right now, right? I'll probably just go with the Mets.
Okay. Blake, Mets or Brewers? Is your dad watching? Do we need to see?
He's probably watching. I'm going Mets because that's who I picked before. And I think their offense is better, so I don't think there's much faith in either of the pitchers there, so I'm just picking based on the offense.
All right, there we go. That bought us some time for some good questions to come in. Laura, I see your super chat here. I'll put it up on the screen. She wants us to give our prediction for the NLDS. Laura, please bear with us with this one. We'll do this at the very end. I know super chats we typically get to right away, but I don't necessarily want to answer this and then maybe it sparks a whole debate and we're not able to get to a bunch of questions, but we certainly will answer this at the end. Let's try to go through some of these. Jonathan wants to know, Jonathan, here real quick. Jonathan wants to know, what was your favorite Dodger team over the last 7 years? I think mine, that's right on the cusp. I'll go 2017. I think that was a fun team and obviously ended in a lot of heartbreak and disappointment and then anger after the fact as we became aware of certain things that were going on. But Sebastian, what's your choice?
Yeah, it's got to be between 2017 and 2020. I think I'm just going to lead in 2020 because that's the first World Series I've seen in my lifetime. So I think that's always going to have a special place in my heart. But this team, 2017, that's pretty special. But I want to go 2020.
Blake,
I was thinking 2013, and then I realized it's more than 7 years ago. But that was a really fun team. So honorable mention, shout out to 2013. 2017 is probably the easy one here. I think that team was really fun, a lot of special. They should have won the World Series if the Astros weren't cheating. So that was the first team I saw get to the World Series. I know they obviously didn't win it, but I just remember that was a really special moment.
Yeah. All right. Jonathan is giving you a pass. He says 2013 works too. So there you go. All right. Let's see. Blake, let's circle back to kind of the Gavin Lux discussion. Matt Rojas says, does anyone think maybe Kike should start at second base as opposed to Lux? Kike has been hot. I mean, I don't see Dave. Lux had been struggling to sort of end the season. And Dave, I think, was it during the final homestand against the Padres? He said, he's going to stick with him. He trusts him. And then Lux went out that night and had 1 or 2 big hits against the Padres, if I'm not mistaken.
He had 2, and then he had like 1 the next day, and then a few against the Rockies. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, I the way I would answer this is I don't see it, and I'm fine if it's a right-hander keeping Lux in the lineup. And Blake, just real quick, do you oppose to any of that?
They're going to start Lux versus righties and Kike, maybe even Chris Taylor versus lefties. I know Dave gave Taylor a lot of run there, and a lot of people love to hate on him, but he was pretty good for the last few months of the season versus lefties. So I think they'll just stick with that platoon there and keep going like that.
Sebastian, would you make any sort of change or go with what they've been doing?
Yeah, I'd just go what they've been doing.
All right. Yeah, there you go, Matt. There's the answers there. I'm seeing some people disagreeing with us, which is certainly fine, and it makes it fun to, sort of debate the different options. Scooter wants to know, what do you predict the amount of innings that Flaherty is going to go for game 1? I'm going to say 5 1/3. Sebastian?
I was gonna say 5, but I didn't think about the thirds. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on how big a lead, or hopefully how big a lead the Dodgers give him. But yeah, I'd say 5 is pretty much a safe bet. That's kind of like been his median during his time with the Dodgers.
Blake?
I'm going 5 2/3. I'm going to be the optimistic one here.
There we go. But if you go over, then you're penalized, so your pick won't count.
Okay.
Paul Gutierrez wants to know, will Barnes start any playoff games? Honestly, with Kershaw not available for the NLDS, I wouldn't expect it. Maybe if they get into the NLCS and Kershaw is back and starts one of the games, then at that point, I think we'll see Barnes. But yeah, other than that, or in the NLCS, if Buehler is starting, maybe they pair. I think Buehler and Barnes typically work well together or have a little bit of history. Maybe I'm just misremembering 2020 and all that. But that's really the only scenarios where I see him starting.
Barnes also has the fractured toe still that he's dealing with.
Right.
So, like, I don't think they're going to push him into the lineup if they don't have to.
Yeah, good point. James says, Sebastian, I apologize, you're being covered by this one, but James says, in hindsight, was it better to, quote, tank for the 2 seed once the West was clinched or play for home field? I think Philadelphia eased up to let the Dodgers and San Diego duke it out. And James, I'm going to take your question off the screen just so we could see Sebastian's face. This was a big topic of discussion as the Dodgers clinched the NL West, as James said, and then, kind of inching closer towards having the best record in the playoffs. Sebastian, was it worth it to get home field advantage throughout the World Series, or should the Dodgers have maybe tried to manipulate the standings a little bit?
I think you never want to I think you're just inviting bad karma from the baseball gods. Plus home field, you can't really beat that. So I don't know if they did, but I like that they got it. So I don't really know. Yeah.
Blake, I know we discussed this kind of a lot. Where do you ultimately fall in that discussion?
Just try and win. I know, like, now people say they should have tanked, but if they were losing all those games to tank, I think there have been a lot of complaints about how the Dodgers are going in cold and how they're never going to win and choking when it matters and all that. So I don't think there's a huge difference between home field or your seeding or anything. Like, it's just whoever gets hot and plays their best baseball at the right time is going to end up winning, and I think that's all there is to it. I know you can say, like, you want the easier matchups, but as I pointed out a lot, the easier matchups don't always mean wins. Sometimes the harder matchups do end up winning. And if you want to be the best team, go beat the best teams. So it's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, I've shared this plenty of times on our shows, and I agree. You play the games. I'm not a proponent for tanking in any regard. To me, it goes against what sports are about. I think the other factor to this too is the Dodgers didn't clinch the NL West until the series finale against the Padres. And so at that point, there was only 3 games left in the regular season. And I'm not going to say the Phillies threw in the towel, but they lost, 2 out of 3, or did they get swept by the Nationals? They at least lost 2 out of 3, if I'm not mistaken, to the Nationals that final weekend. So I think there was something a little odd there if you're looking at the standings. But basically, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities for the Dodgers to sort of take their foot off the gas. And had they done it any sooner, then we're looking at a scenario where maybe the Padres end up catching them for the division, and the Dodgers are suddenly playing in the wild card series. And at that point, it's definitely not worth it to be doing something like that. I think a lot of people would have been upset. Go ahead, Blake. You have some info.
I think we need to not disrespect the Nationals. They do employ Joey Gallo.
Oh, that's right.
So let's give some credit there. But to be real, I think it was Anthony talking about the other day. It's hard to tank or try to lose in baseball because I think, to quote him, while it is a team sport, it is very much individualized, where it is the one batter up there and everything's on him, or it is the pitcher on the mound, and you can't tell them go give up 7 runs, go strike out. Like, these guys are still playing for their pride and their stats and their paydays, and there's so much that goes into it. I think it's really not possible to tank, especially with the 28-man rosters as opposed to 40.
Yeah.
Like if it was September from 2010 and you could send out Tim Fedorovich as your starting catcher with Jerry Sands and Justin Sellers and guys like that, then it's a little easier to get to that point, but you still essentially have to play your everyday lineup on an everyday basis. So I just don't really see how you would go about losing like that.
Yeah. I'm seeing in the comments, it looks like we have some Padre fans that have joined our video and our chat tonight. Welcome, everybody. We're looking forward to a fun series this weekend, I'm sure. Go ahead, Blake, show the hat that you...
Them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Or
maybe it'll...
series hat.
You're going to make them mad.
Just
maybe
Padre
it'll end up
fans
getting
here.
balanced out. The Padre fans will say that's the best hat ever. Or maybe they'll hate it too because it's still half Dodgers at that point. All right, let's continue with some questions. Nomo says, would you prefer Ohtani approach his at-bats trying to hit home runs at the cost of strikeouts or try to hit singles and doubles and strike out less? Sebastian, do you feel that maybe Ohtani sells out for some power at times?
When you're as good a hitter as Ohtani, you just try to hit the ball good, and if it's a home run, it's a home run, and if it's it's slug, if it's a single, you want to put a good swing on the ball. That's all you really want to do. I don't think maybe in certain situations you do that, but guys at this level, they just want to put a good swing on the ball, I think. Unless you're talking about the whole launch angle era. Are we kind of past the launch angle era now? I don't know.
You got to ask the computer guy up there. Blake, can you answer that?
I think there's a lot of things that go into hitting more than like launch angle is a very simplified way that fans have started to look at it. I think it was popular for a bit, but now players are more starting to trend to just having good swings and taking good at bats. Like you don't want to hit the ball on the ground, but it's hard. So whatever works for the specific players, it's very individualized because like you don't want a guy like Tommy Edman necessarily swinging for the fences every time, but it works for Shohei Ohtani type stuff. So yeah.
But what about to answer Derek's question specifically? Do you want to see Ohtani like chase the home runs if it means more strikeouts, or do you think that is something he even does? Maybe.
I think he does a little sell out for power at the cost of strikeouts. I think teams are okay with that. There's been a lot of studies on that show like strikeouts don't necessarily correlate too much with runs because a lot of times you offset that by more extra base hits or avoiding double plays instead of just always putting the ball in play. There's times when you just need to put the ball in play is the main thing, but overall, I think selling out for a little power is a good thing.
Yeah. We have a super chat here from Carolina. She says, bias aside, who's the better team as of today? Health, pitching, and offense. Dodgers or Padres? And then she has a blue emoji heart, LA. I think the Dodgers are the better team. I think that their kind of top end talent sort of makes up for some of the other deficiencies that they have. Sebastian, how would you answer this question?
Yeah, kind of like I alluded to before, like no one in the league this year is like clear cut best team in the league. Like you said, I think the team that has Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts. I know Freddie's hurt, but I think the team who has that, you could kind of give the slight edge to. I know maybe Padres have like a slight edge in pitching, but I think it all kind of balances out. And I think I'd give the Dodgers like by a slight edge.
Blake, who are you taking?
The Dodgers had a plus 156 run differential this year. So they scored 156 more runs than they allowed. That includes pitching, defense, hitting, everything. The Padres were at 91, and that's considering all the injuries and everything the Dodgers had. The Dodgers won the most games in baseball. They took the division over the Padres by 5 games, and I do think a large sample size is the best way to determine who the best team is. So on top of that, you have Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Like, it's a really good team, and it's going to be hard for anyone to beat them if they play at their level, but of course, if, as we've seen in the past, the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs, and the Padres are also a very, very good team. They're probably the second best team in baseball, so I would give the Dodgers the edge, like 60-40 maybe is who's the better team, but they're both really good.
All right, there we go. If that answer gets clipped, we're going to be, all three of us are going to be accused of West Coast bias, I think, for picking the Dodgers. All right, let's
The
try.
Padres are West Coast.
That, Blake, that was the joke. Yes, that was part of the
Blake.
joke. Eric Flores wants to know, how much faith do you have in Mookie? And he adds, don't lie when you're answering this. I'm a little worried about Mookie, but I think Ohtani being around helps take some of the pressure off him and serves as a little bit of motivation to kind of, remind people that, he's Mookie Betts and he's pretty good as well. Blake, how are you answering this one?
A 7. Like, considering the player who Mookie Betts is, it should be a 9.5 or a 10. But what we've seen in the past, I need to see it from Mookie again first. It's not just been in the last few years. He's had a lot of history of down performance in the postseason, even with the Red Sox. So, yeah, he needs to go out there and prove it. I think he has all the talent to, and I think he's capable of it, and he can. We just need to see it.
Ray Bart, this is rude but funny. He says, I have faith Mookie will get at least one hit this time around. Again, a little uncalled for, but also kind of funny. So I wanted to give him some credit there. Back-to-back Nate. I feel like this is going to be a popular discussion and talking point throughout this series. He wants to know, do you think the Dodgers will match the Padres' energy? Padres play with a lot of emotion. Sebastian, this has been something that the Dodgers have been criticized for at times, primarily when they've played the Padres, I think. Is there a huge discrepancy in emotion? And to Nate's question, do you think the Dodgers will be able to match that energy in the NLDS this time around?
Kind of my view of not of the Dodgers per se, but like sports in general, I always am in favor of a team that kind of just goes about their business. Like in the big moments, yeah, like they'll show emotion, but like because I'm not a fan of like trash talk in general. Not like it offends me, but like I'm always like, you're trash talking to, like, in any kind of context or sport. Like you're trash talking too soon. Like game's not over, series not over, whatever. I think you're just kind of inviting bad stuff in. Energy, I don't like. I'd prefer effort over emotion or energy. Let me put it that way. I don't need to see them like going crazy. Like it'll just come naturally. I think basically is what I'm trying to say. Like they don't need to try to force anything. Just kind of go about their business.
Blake, how do you think the Dodgers are going to match the Padres in this department?
I think they did during that series where they needed to win to take the division. I think they definitely showed up. Took them a little bit. That first game was kind of tough, but then they started stringing together a rally before that triple play, and that drained out a lot of emotion. I'm sure they could have bounced back the next day and said, like, wow, that was terrible. We're still bummed out about it, but they didn't. They came back and they stepped up. They won the next 2 games. We saw a lot of emotion from the players. Mookie, even Will Smith, like, you never see that from him, and he bat flipped, and so I like to see it. I like when they're out there having fun and playing with energy, and if they can keep that going forward, I feel pretty good about this team.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to add, like the whole, like my kind of, I don't know how I want to word this, but like my perfect analogy or like example is like Corey Seager in 2017. You don't really see Corey like doing all that much in the regular season, then he hits that homer off Verlander and it just comes out. I think as long as they like play within themselves, they'll be fine.
Real quick, I'll answer this one. Joel is asking if Yamamoto's pitching game 1. No, if you missed it a few minutes ago, and we do have an article up on DodgerBlue.com as well. Jack Flaherty is starting game 1. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is going in game 2 on Sunday. Kind of some, I think, scheduling factors were the primary primarily behind that decision, our article. And if you want to rewind this video once we're done to kind of that segment, you'll find our answers there. I don't want to necessarily have us repeat everything for everybody and people will get bored. Javier says, who has the better bullpen going? And I think this is interesting, a good question to ask, because I also came away from the Padres, and it was the regular season, but the Padres, like, we've heard a lot about their bullpen and Tanner Scott and the different moves that they made and this and that. And I alluded to it tonight, kind of our intro of, hey, like the Padres had a lead and then their bullpen almost let it slip away. Blake, if you needed to pick a bullpen, are you taking the Dodgers or the Padres? And remember to leave your West Coast bias at the door.
I think it's pretty close to a coin flip.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make a definite answer one way or the other without like pointing out that the other side is also really close or really good. With that being said, I think I would give the Padres the edge on like the high-end talent side and the Dodgers the edge on the depth side of things. So it's kind of what you prefer there. I think if you only needed to cover 2 or 3 innings a night, I'm taking the Padres. As we've seen with the Dodgers, if you need to cover 6 innings a night, I'm taking the Dodgers there. But they're both really good bullpens, probably the best 2 in the playoffs and in all of baseball. So it's tough, but probably the edge to the Padres, like slightly.
Yeah, I agree. I think whether it's game planning or whatever the case may be, I think the Dodgers do a little bit of a better job matching up their bullpen. And so maybe to your point, that might be where the depth factor comes in, where they have more options if they need to go to those. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's as big of a discrepancy maybe as some people have sort of painted it. All right, we'll answer a few more. If you want to make sure that we get to yours, then Super Chat is the way to go. We'll definitely put it up on the screen as we're doing with this one. Otherwise, we'll answer this, and then, like I said, a couple more, and then we're going to close out the stream for tonight. Evil Draft says, do you want to see Yankees versus Dodgers in the World Series? Who says no? Sebastian, now that the Astros are out, so there's no necessarily revenge potential there, would you like to see Dodgers and Yankees play for it all?
Yep, I certainly would not be the one saying no. I'd love that matchup. You got Juan Soto, Aaron Judge going up against Ohtani, Mookie, and Freddie. I mean, that's what you pay to see. That's baseball at its finest right there.
With their the biggest winner of all that, I think, would be the MLB in the commissioner's office, right, Blake? Is there anybody that would be happier than the league to see this type of matchup?
Maybe Yankees fans, because they've had some playoff struggles there. Just Yankees getting there would be great for them, but MLB would love that. The revenue factor there would be great. The superstars, amazing. Judge, Ohtani, Soto, and Mookie Betts are probably 4 of the top 7 players in baseball conservatively. Like, that's a lot of star power there. I think for Dodger fans, you might be hoping for a little bit of an easier matchup because the Yankees are really good. And if you're a Yankee fan, you'd probably be hoping for an easier matchup because the Dodgers are really good. But yeah, that would be a real fun World Series.
Yeah. We have another super chat. This one's from Mr. Kirk. If you could make a 1-player trade with the Padres today, what would it be? And keep in mind, this needs to be fair. Like, you're not going to trade Austin Barnes for Dylan Cease. But Sebastian, if there was 1 player on the Padres roster that you would like to see on the Dodgers, who would it be?
Yeah, you just said it'd be Dylan Cease because that's pretty much like the perfect match right now. It's exactly what the Dodgers needed, another starter that they could rely on. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I was kind of going to offer that trade, but I don't know who had to be willing to give up in return, but to make it fair. But yeah, definitely Dylan Cease.
Yeah, I'm seeing Eric Flores is saying Cease for Glasnow. So at least if Glasnow's healthy, that's comparable. Blake, keeping in mind the cost, what's 1 player you would like to see you would do a trade for?
Manny Machado.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, shortstop, put him there.
I was going to say, what position are you playing him at, though? He's not a shortstop anymore.
Yeah, I'm just kidding because I knew that would get a rise out of people. But if you want energy on the Dodgers, that's the way to go about it. Tatis is really good. I know a lot of people don't like him, and
you're just going for it all, aren't you?
I mean, you're telling me talent only you wouldn't want Tatis or Machado on the Dodgers.
The problem is, if I would take Machado if I needed to pick between those two. I think the problem is you're not getting just talent only. Like there are other aspects of them.
That's fair, but Tatis is fun.
So is Tatis your pick then?
Probably. I do think Cease would probably be the best option, like to match up on needs, but I'm kind of the mindset of always just take the best player if you can. I don't think there's like any world where there's trades that are kind of fair between these teams unless you're giving up players you don't want to give up. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know who the Padres would add for Austin Barnes.
There you go. All right. That was a good question, Mr. Kirk. Our next super chat's from Nathan. He wants to know how many Dodgers on the team have that dog in them. Blake, I know you've mentioned Teoscar as having the dog in him. Is Ohtani on that list for you?
Ohtani is on that list.
Okay.
What
about Tommy Tanks?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's a very like chilled, relaxed kind of guy. I don't think he's that high energy. I'm pulling up their roster right now.
All right. Well, as you do that, Sebastian, okay. Well, are you ready?
I'll go Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, Joe Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm giving him that one. Michael Kopech, Alex Vesia, Blake Treinen, Austin Barnes, Kike, Miggy Rowe, Teoscar, and Ohtani. That's my dog list.
That's a very long list. It's more than I would have thought going into this. So
it's more like playoff performer kind of merging into there, and like guys who aren't going to be overwhelmed by the big moment. I guess you could kind of throw Chris Taylor on that list, but like when you get into like the Chris Taylors and Austin Barnes and Joe Kelly of it, it's more like they have the dog, but the talent isn't as much there, so you don't see it as much. But
so it's a little dog. It's not a big dog.
Yeah. It's like the guys I trust to play up to the moment and not get overwhelmed or flustered by it.
Okay, Sebastian that was a long list, so I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
that was damn near named everybody. I think he kind of covered it all.
Okay, yeah. Then, hey, my question then to this is if that's how many guys that are on the list, and the Dodgers should have no problem in the playoffs, then this should be a cakewalk for them.
Well, do we want to go over the Padres dogs too?
No.
I mean, I don't know if their list would be quite as long.
Might.
I don't know. Maybe I think that at that point it boils down to how are you defining it. I think for your sake and your list, it made sense. The Padres, I'm not really sure. All right, let's get to a couple more here. JP says, does the 5-game series benefit the Dodgers more or the Padres? To me, the shorter series benefits the Dodgers based on starting pitching. JP, I'm going to pull the question down just so we could see. Sebastian, yeah, this was one of my arguments when everybody was saying, hey, like, fall to the 2 seed, so you're not having to play the Padres potentially in the NLDS. My point was the NLDS is kind of theoretically the healthiest, kind of most prepared. The Dodgers are going to be able to line up their pitching, their bullpen will be rested, this and that. And if you're so worried about them needing to beat the Padres, and the Padres are this great team, then the Padres should advance to the NLCS. And if you want the Dodgers to advance, well, all of a sudden now you have to beat this team that you're worried about 4 times instead of 3. Sebastian, I saw you nodding along. Are you sharing kind of that same line of thought?
Yeah, the playoffs in general are kind of a crapshoot and like full of chaos. The NLDS is like, besides the wild card, before when it was the 1-game wild card, like that didn't really factor in because it's just the 2 teams and then they advance. Factoring that out, the NLDS is like the most chaos you could get. 5 games, anything can happen. 2013, I think the Dodgers were like the lower seed in the Braves, and they ended up winning. Just kind of takes the right time and going in hot. And yeah, this is the time that you want to face a good team theoretically.
Blake, do you see a shorter series benefiting one of the 2 teams more so?
In general, I think a longer series is always going to help a better team. But I do think this is somewhat of an exception where the Dodgers starting pitching is clearly weaker and the short series will be a little more beneficial to them. Like, if it was a long series, it takes more of the randomness away. So if the Dodgers were clearly the better team, they would win more often than not in a longer series. But that's still getting into sample sizes, like how many games do you actually need to play in a series to determine who is the best team on a consistent basis, which probably is still more than 7, just because of how random and hard baseball is. So I do think the Dodgers are going to benefit from a shorter series this time around, but in general, that goes against my usual line of thinking. So it's a weird year this year.
Okay. All right. I think we have, let's see, maybe 2 more and then Laura's, which I told her we would get to. Well, hey, let's do Laura's first, and then we'll say, well, actually, we could do Corbin. Question: what do you guys think about the helmet sponsors for all playoff games? Yeah, you see, if you're watching this, Sebastian gave it a big thumbs down. I will say it hasn't, surprisingly, it has not bothered me as much as I thought it would. Kind of sing it when the news came out and the pictures and all that. I thought this is terrible, but watching the games that have been on, like, I kind of honestly didn't really notice it, and I was surprised and disappointed in myself because this was another opportunity for me to yell at everybody to get off my lawn, but I'm not doing it. Blake, where are you? We saw Sebastian's thumb down. Where are you?
I generally don't like adding logos and all that. I still don't like the Nike logo on jerseys, but it's also not in my thought process at the time. Like, I'm not sitting there watching the Braves try and come back against the Padres and being like, wow, this would be way better without that logo there. So, like, it's still baseball. It's still fun at the end of the day. Like, whatever.
Okay, so not caring. So Sebastian, you're on the island by yourself there.
I just personally don't like the soccerification of baseball. Football's the last bastion of having no ads on the jerseys. So,
I know both you guys are big NFL fans. Have there been any talks about that changing at all?
I don't think so. I
haven't heard anything about that, but probably at some point they're going to see all the extra revenue and get on board.
Maybe after they've added 20 games to the schedule, once they realized, oh, we actually can't keep doing this anymore, they'll go down the jersey ads.
Yep.
Oh man, I lost my train of thought, but I had a follow-up for that. Yeah, I don't know. I apologize. All right. Let's answer Laura's super chat from earlier. Laura, I see that you're still in here with us, and I want to thank everyone. We have over 2,000 people watching this live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Obviously, the big news are the Padres sweeping the Braves to advance to the NLDS against the Dodgers. 3rd time since 2020 that they're playing each other. These are the only playoff matchups in MLB history between the two teams. So they've happened in our lifetime, and before that, they weren't playing each other. Blake, I'm going to go last because I feel like I may have to bring some balance to our show. So Blake, go ahead and.
That means Matt's picking the Padres.
Go ahead and make your pick for the NLDS. And we don't have to. I know that you and Scott, we're probably going to do kind of a little bit more of a deeper dive into the NLDS. So if you want to save a lot of that for tomorrow night's show, that's fine. If you want to just go straight number, that works.
I'll say Dodgers in 5. And my reasoning there, just 5 space, because last year they were eliminated on my birthday, and this year Game 5 is on my birthday, so they're going to turn it around this year.
Okay, Sebastian, what are you picking?
I mean, it obviously depends on if the offense actually shows up, but I'm going to go with the gentleman's sweep. Dodgers gentleman's sweep.
Wow. So you think they bounce back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the way the offense has been looking recently, like Padres have good pitching, but if the Shohei Ohtani has been just absolutely on fire, and I think that's just what's giving me the most hopium right now. He's just been on an absolute tear, and I think that kind of hopefully it'll be either like it'll carry over and maybe hopefully be contagious.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you're watching this with us either live or the replay, you're seeing that I'm putting up a lot of Dodgers predictions. Dodgers in 4, I think, seems to be the overwhelming majority. Like I said, I want to make sure our website, our video coverage aims to be balanced and not biased. So under that line of thinking, I will go with Padres pulling off another upset, and I think they do it. Maybe not. I will say they do it in 4 games for, again, the sake of bringing balance to this show. It's the only reason I'm doing that. So don't send me any angry tweets, people.
I get trolled for wearing a hat with the logo on it, and Matt's out here picking the Padres. You know, he's probably going to be celebrating their win. I'm just here like wearing a hat.
It's strictly, I did it in people who've been with us since 2021. I did it when the Dodgers and Giants went to a game 5. I needed, Daniel and Jeff were being too homerish, so I had to bring balance to the show. And I said, I think the Padres will end up winning. Of course, that didn't end up happening. And last year, hey, I said the Dodgers were going to take care of the Diamondbacks pretty easily, and I was completely wrong there. So you might want me to make the wrong prediction in this case.
That's true.
All right, let's see.
It's like you picking Marvel versus Star Wars. Always wrong.
No, that we're not getting into that tonight. It's the playoffs. Like that's an off-season episode. No pun intended there. All right. You guys know we like to discuss food, so let's end with this one. Ray F wants to know nuggets or tenders. I assume we're talking chicken, which if that's the case, Blake is the perfect person. Which of these two are you taking, Blake?
Yes.
Fair enough. I'm going tenders. I think just in general, you can find good chicken tenders more than you can find easier than you can find some good chicken nuggets. Sebastian, are you feeling strongly one way or the other?
I'm going nugs just because in general I don't like thick slices of meat just because I like to, when I cook any kind of meat, I like cook the hell out of it because I like it to be like not like totally like not like a steak, it'll be like whatever. But like if it's like chicken, like I want like a good crust on it, and I don't like when it's all like squishy and stuff in the middle. So chicken nuggets are easier to kind of just cook.
Okay. Well, it was 1-1. Blake's pick doesn't count because he's
I'll
sat on the
take
fence.
tenders if I have to pick one.
Yes, you did.
But like I don't really mind either way. They're both good. Just give me chicken.
Okay. All right. There we go. I think that's going to do it for tonight, unless we get maybe one last question here. We'll answer that. If not, let me see. Yeah, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you again, everybody. We had over 2,000 people in here with us. It was lively. I see I upset some of you with taking the Padres. Again, it's strictly for the sake of just wanting us to be balanced. That's all. And yeah, go back to yelling at Blake for wearing his
I'm bringing balance.
His Los Angeles Padres hat to start the show. Again, the plan for us tomorrow night, Thursday, is for Blake and Scott to do their usual show. They'll probably do a little bit more of a deeper dive into some NLDS stuff since, a little bit more time. Maybe some additional information has come out. The Dodgers do have a workout at the stadium tomorrow that I'll be at. Not sure. Maybe Blake will be there with me as well. We're trying to figure all of that out. Perhaps I will join Blake and Scott. Maybe if there's anything big that came out from the workout and I need to hop on with them. But if not, we'll have videos up on our YouTube channel and all that. So again, that's Sebastian and Blake. I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time.